Hello and welcome to Trojan Talk. I'm your host, Aaron Taylor. Today we'll be discussing the Journalism Symposium taking place this year. My guest today is journalism professor and the moderator for the symposium, Steve Stewart. Steve, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Aaron. I'm glad to be here.
And the annual Journalism Symposium, this year we've got a special guest coming in that's a Pulitzer Prize winner. We'll talk more about that later. But for the folks out there that are unfamiliar with the symposium and what the School of Journalism does, tell us a little about the symposium and what the symposium is supposed to set forth for the students. So,
the symposium is an event that's open to the public that we have in the spring, where we invite outside speakers in to talk about journalism and communication in some form. The full name of the symposium is the M. Stanton Evans Symposium on Money, Politics, and the Media. And it's named after Stan Evans, who was one of our faculty members for decades. Stan died last year. This will be the first one we've had since Stan's death, but he was one of our outstanding nationally known faculty members, and the symposium is named for him. And we invite journalists generally to talk about how to do good journalism.
And covering a lot of those topics you're talking about there, money, politics, and the media. And in past years, there's been a wide variety of guests that have taken part in this. I know many years ago, Karl Rove was a guest at the symposium. You've had people from the New York Times and various other media outlets that have been a part of the symposium. And I know it's an eye-opening experience for journalists out there, journalism students, to learn a little bit more from people who are out there practicing in the field.
That's right. Going out there and seeing people who actually practice it and have done it themselves. And in this case, we've got a guy who's not only has done it, but he wrote a book about how other people did it. That's very valuable to students and to practicing journalists.
And let's talk a little about the guest of this year's symposium. Who have we got coming?
His name is Hank Klibanoff. Hank is the co-author of The Race Beat. It's the story of how the news media covered the civil rights movement in the 1930s through the 60s, I guess. And Hank is a newspaper man by profession. He was in journalism as a practitioner for about 35 years. He and his co-author, Gene Roberts, another newspaper man, wrote this book, which is a very well-documented and researched history of how the news media, the newspapers, radio and television, covered the civil rights movement and the difference that made in society.
And I would think that the timing kind of works out, especially with everything that's going on in the state within the last year, with all of the anniversaries that took place last year regarding the civil rights movement, and the fact that a lot of that took place right up the road. I know it's got to hit close to home probably to a lot of the students and maybe some of the faculty members that are and staff that will be taking part and listening to the symposium.
That's right. We had last year, of course, the anniversary of the Selma Voting Rights March, among other civil rights milestones, and that took place in Alabama. And Alabama is also the venue for a lot of events that are described in this book. A lot of the characters in the book are Alabama people. Grover Hall, Jr., who was editor of the Montgomery Advertiser, for whom our journalism school is named, is one of the editors whose activities and efforts are described in this book.
So there's a connection to the Hall School of Journalism in this book and what might be discussed. So some students may learn a little bit about the place where they're taking classes every day.
That's correct.
So now for this also, we talked about for journalism students, but this is also open to the public. And there may be a lot of folks out there who are interested in this, and especially those that are interested in the civil rights movement. So you don't necessarily have to be a journalism student or member of the journalism faculty to take part in this.
That's correct. We encourage students and individuals from all fields of interest to come, particularly, for example, history and politics, and those who are interested in human rights. There's a lot of material here that we'll be talking about, not only the issues that were taking place back in the 20th century, but also the ones that remain today.
And now, but obviously the symposium is happening in the morning, but there's also another opportunity for anyone interested in getting some firsthand advice from a Pulitzer Prize winner. You've got another event happening in the afternoon as well, right?
That's right. Mr. Klibanoff will be meeting with interested faculty and students. Anybody can come in Wallace Hall, room 336B at 1 o'clock. It'll be over by 2. And that's about writing and editing, and I'm sure about reporting and researching. His book is a good example of academic research as well as a good example of journalism, so he can offer a lot of good advice about how to get that stuff done and do it right.
And put it all together. So now, if anyone is interested in participating in the symposium and attending the symposium, when and where will it be?
The symposium starts at 10 o'clock on Thursday morning, February 11th, in the Trojan Center Ballroom at Troy University in Troy, Alabama. It'll last about an hour and a half.
And so open to anyone who's interested in learning a little bit about covering the civil rights movement and race journalism throughout the decades.
It's a public event. We have a hashtag, which is RaceBeatTroy, on Twitter. If you want to get more information there, you can look there. And we'll also be sharing a conversation about the symposium on that, using that hashtag.
On there. Well, good luck with this year's symposium. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Harry.
And thank you for joining us on today's edition of Trojan Talk.